From the moment I came of age, I clearly remember. In my school, they used to march me across a stage singing Rule Britannia. But of my ancestry, listen what they taught me. Tarzan ruled the jungles of Africa. So that's why I'm saying, teach the children the truth which they hide. So therefore, Father, they'll see you with honor, respect, and pride. Teach them that Africa is where civilization began. Teach them that Africa was the cradle of creation. Teach them ancient Egyptians were all Africans. Teach them that Plato and Socrates taught African philosophies. Teach them that poetry, music, and art was Africa's own from the start. Teach them Africans were the very, very first men to walk on this universe. Teach them. Teach them, teach them. Teach the children. Teach them, teach them. Oh, how they glorified Europe's past in the books they gave me. But they said my people were barbarous, no culture, no history. Africans were savage. We had no heritage until they came and preached Christianity. What a lie. So that's why I'm saying, teach the children the truth they must learn. Who are the vulgar, stole of culture and call it their own. Teach them that Africa is the land of King Solomon, who married Makeda, the queen of Sheba, and African. Teach them Christianity belongs to us historically. Teach them Islamic culture came from Axum in Africa. Teach them Bilal of Islam came from Cush, he was Egyptian. Teach them the Holy Quran clearly states that Moses was an African. Teach them. Teach them, teach them. Teach the children. Teach them, teach them. We have been misled, we've been underfed, made slaves and exploited. We all have been fed with lies, Europeanized and taken for granted. But a change is near, I could see the sign. Let's prepare your children and mine to take their rightful place at that point in time. So that's why I'm saying, teach the children the things they never told. Like the contribution by the African to the modern world. But tell them that Africa is not the land that she used to be because of the plunder up to this 20th century. Teach them of Mansa Musa, that great African conqueror. Teach them King Minos of old built the first navy in this world. Teach them the year's calendar was first written in Africa. Teach them how Europeans stole and still thief in Africa gold. Teach them. Teach them, teach them. The little children. Teach them, teach them. You gotta teach them. Teach them, teach them. Teach the children. Teach them, teach them. It was the Egyptians who were Cushites that gave the art of writing. Also, the Egyptians who brought to light the skill of shipping. The art of embalming up to this day has never been equaled in any way. But these people were savages, Europe said. That's why I'm saying, teach the children from books of the past, like the vanquished cities, the great Maccabees, and the Kebra Nega. Teach them that Africa, as all great historians know, man funk his utopia nearly 4 million years ago. Teach them the Arcadia was the first tongue spoken by man. Teach them the Demotic Scroll was the first writings of this world. Teach them pharaohs were Cushites, who were blacks, not whites. Teach them medicine began by Imhotep, he was Egyptian. Teach them. Teach them, teach them. Teach your children. Teach the children. You gotta teach them. Teach them, teach them. African history. Teach the children. Teach them for me. Teach them, teach them. Teach the children. Teach the children. You gotta teach them. Teach them, teach them. You gotta teach them. Teach the children. Teach them, teach them. Teach them, teach them. You gotta teach them. I'm the Lord.
Oh, yes. Teach them. Teach them, teach them. You all know why I always say when God was sharing gifts and he gave us the gift of the calypso, it's the greatest music the world has ever seen. Only the calypso could do what the mighty Juke just did there. You know, when I play this for my courses at the university, at the end of the course, the student will say, but Dr. Hines, the Calypsonian was saying, everything you teach me. I say, yes, that is why Calypso is so unique. It's a whole course on Africana history that the mighty Jew just gave us. The mighty Jew, Kelvin Pope. Let's start tonight because I was at the symposium at Cultural Labor College on this Negro story. And as we were going in to the we were going into the symposium, the government issued a statement at 3:00, a memo from the cabinet saying that some people find Negro offensive and East Indian offensive. And because of that, they're issuing a memo to change the language to Guyanese of African descent, Guyanese of Indian descent, and tralala and tralala. But before they do that, they say, oh, the PNC, they've been in power all this time and they never changed the thing. And Nigel Hughes, they know the thing was there and he never did nothing about it, and so on and so on. Here's the story. They've removed Negro, but they decide what we gonna call ourselves. They never said, well, we find it offensive, and we calling in the African leaders and the African organizations and ask them what they want to be called. And then, as Nigel Hughes point out tonight, they issue a memo from cabinet, which means when this cabinet go another cabinet and come in and change what this cabinet said to another cabinet, it's not enshrined in law. And so we passed the resolution tonight, say we find the statement offensive. It is as offensive as the use of the word Negro, that African people must be consulted and they must decide what they want to be called, and that it must be enshrined in the law. We have asked the PNC and the AFC parliamentarians to table a bill in parliament asking for us to be called African Guyanese. Resounding yes for the motion. Good evening. Tonight we have a big show. Sorry we started late, but we have a big show. We have Dr. Kimani Nehusi. I think this is his second appearance. We have the evergreen Eric Phillips. All know when Eric come on here is plenty. plenty, as them people would say in the village. It's plenty head work. He come in with plenty. And as I was playing the calypso there, I was thinking about Kimani and Eric and them, because this is what them boys been teaching all the history from the Egypt thing and so on and so forth. And my sidekick on a Friday night is here. Dr. Vincent Adams is here. So we're gonna be doing it tonight. A little late, so we're encroaching on Sherrod, but Sherrod, beg your pardon tonight. Please share the link and let everyone know Politics 101 is on. A little bit late, but we are doing it. Let me bring in our guests. Excuse me, somebody talking my name, but I hope it's a good thing. And let's bring our guests in. Dr. Vincent Adams, Dr. Kimani Nehusi, and Chief. Eric, I don't know your chief name, so I'm going to say Chief Eric. I know me all as Chief Uhuru.
Yes, Uhuru. I'm supposed to Zulu.
Wow.
Sipo Zulu. Zulu name.
A Zulu name. Zulu name. It's a Zulu name. Gentlemen, brothers, good evening. Welcome to Politics 101. Brother Kimani, welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Hines. Good evening to you, Eric. Good evening to you, Vincent.
And
hey, Kimani.
Kimani builds me out, you know, Eric. When I call he, he said, he used a big fancy thing. But what he mean, he said, "Bye, how come you call me?" I said, "Well, I call you for work." He said, "Suspect, so." You know, Eric and Vincent, when I was a little boy coming into the thing, Kimani, he from Queenstown, but he come to teach in Buxton as a punishment. And he became a Buxtonian. them big people used to jam you. A wee family, because they see him in Buxton all the time. And he must the wee family. And you say, well, he's not from here, you know. Well, he from here now, because I will see him here all the time. So he became a Buxton. When I come in the thing, he and Kwesi and Kofi, and we had a little town by name John Cromwell.
John, yeah.
Yeah, and the three of them get a discussion one night, and they're talking about the diaspora. And me's a little 13, 14-year-old boy. When we hear the word diaspora, the word sound nice. And I know it's something about Africa. I love that word from the day. I didn't even want to know the name just sound nice. All them by this tag the word. It sound nice. As Teacher George would say, them by mouth sweet. You know them water come out from the mouth like when you put butter on a hot frying pan.
Hey, that time he's still lucky they didn't send it. They sent it to Buxton and not Christian Borg.
I would have come and quiet up Christian Borg, man. But Vincent, we knew each other before then because we met on the 19 cricket.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. And he's athlete. Well, Vincent, I didn't know he played cricket. I know he was a run man.
He used to try.
No.
You can talk about one game. You can talk about one game when they beat the national team in Queenstown. That's what you can talk about there now.
But that's where we met. But cricket was my number one game.
And Eric, you was an athlete too. You was an athlete at Queen's College too.
Yeah.
So we have athletes here tonight. So here, my students always ask me, Dr. Hines, why when you all black professors, you all teaching psychology, you all teaching politics, and next thing you all gone to John Coltrane, and you all gone to all kind of music and thing, and you have to explain to them given our experiences, we have to be always thinking at various levels. So you go from John Coltrane to Muhammad Ali, and, and you think with consummate ease, because education for us was education for liberation, not just to pass the exam. So you have to know everything.
It's,
Everything.
it's also true that our people's methodology is a holistic one,
There you go.
and we don't compartmentalize knowledge in a way that some people do. It's important to say, okay, we're doing geography or history or psychology or whatnot, but we must also recognize that reality is interrelated. And as human beings, we're simultaneously all kinds of things. We don't stop being parents when we go on the job. We don't stop being Muslim. We don't stop being African or Indian. We're all kinds of things simultaneously. And sometimes it is misleading to focus too much on a single area without recognizing its interconnection
Goodness.
with other areas. And in our people's philosophy, the oldest philosophy in the world, we know about oneness, we know about the interconnected nature.
We've lost your song, Kimani.
Yeah, we lost your
Yeah,
song.
we lost your song. I think you might have muted yourself by accident.
Yeah, he's muted.
Yeah.
Unmute
Okay.
yourself.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, we're in you.
Okay. The point I was making is that our people philosophy, from first philosophy you know about, recognize an interconnected universe and an interconnected environment. This is why we were the first practitioners of environmentalism before it had that name, because our people knew and understood that to mess with any one aspect of the environment would eventually turn out to bring down the whole structure. And we could see this in many ways in our people's articulation of their reality. So that was that. We didn't go in for this one dimensional
One plus
explanation.
one equal two instead of
Mhm.
1 + 1 equal 11.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Kimani has given his opening statement, and it's only fair that the rest of you give your opening statement. So I go to you, Eric, for your opening statement, and then I'll go to Dr. Adams, and then we'll get into the meat of the matter, as they say.
Good night, gentlemen, all. Well, I want to follow up on Kimani because people don't understand African philosophy. People don't understand we were the first people on the earth, the first doctors, first scientists, first whoever it is. People forget the Dogons knew that there was a third star way up in the sky, and it took them a long time with sophisticated technology to find the third star. But we are linked to the earth. That's who we are. We're earth people. And that's how we interact with the elements. So to Kimani's point, everything is connected, everything is one circle, but everything is also linear and abstract. And we have the ability to see through all of those things because of our lived experiences. Our experiences are fundamentally different from any other group of people because of what we've had to go through and because we've come from Mother Africa.
Eric Phillips. And Eric, tell us, you're an engineer, right?
Yeah. Two different engineering degrees.
Yeah, tell us what kind of engineer, because you all bad.
I did chemical engineering chemical engineering in Canada. Then I did telecommunications engineer at Bell Labs and Stevens Institute of Technology. Then I had an MBA in marketing and international business.
Are you here? Are you here? And look, another scientist here. Another Vincent Adams. He's another engineer. So you all know he good, you see. And I'm making this point because the way, if you come from outer space and you come to Guyana, you will believe that African Guyanese have contributed nothing to Guyana, you know, as Mr. Jack Jones said a couple of weeks ago, that because we went in, Burnham and the PNC put us in the professions and pauperize us, you know. I see Eric is a pauper, Vincent is a pauper, I see Kimani is a pauper. They bring tremendous knowledge here, you see. But the way in which these caricatures are placed in our midst, I not get money because Burnham SNIO for do business. He send you all to be soldier and to be scientist and to be liar. And so I had to make the point tonight that our people know what they were doing when they were sending us to study law, because slavery was legal. Slavery was legal, and we had to understand the law and so forth. And as Kimani talked about the environment, we were doing these things long before they had name. I remember Professor Rex Nettiford telling me, "Doctor, I was doing cultural studies long before it had a name." Right? And it's true. Nettiford and them were doing that thing before they start calling it cultural studies, you know? And so learn about the society. Now this word Negro is now on the agenda only because young man was arrested, Kidaki.
Hey, before you go, you didn't give me my turn.
Oh Jesus! I give you your opening statement.
No, I just want to.
Yes, go right ahead.
I just want to add to our esteemed brothers. It's, you know, the you know, like, for example, I tell my kids, and I did not realize even until I came to the United States and you know, was an adult and you know, was really educated in terms of not knowing, for example, what we're discussing here, the number of inventions up with you know, that came from blacks, and it goes way back in our history since during slavery, because they had to innovate. They weren't, you know, they did not have the luxury of having things, so they had to survive. So they developed right there in their slave lodges, if you will. They had to develop things that even making fires or keeping cool, or you know, whatever. They had to innovate, and a lot of inventions, as a matter of fact. If you see the list, I'm sure you folks know the inventions, that list of it, including a simple thing such as the traffic light. You know,
Yes.
that was invented by a black person, and there's a long list of stuff. And that's only what we know, because what happened was, of course, their white masters took their, you know, their inventions, and of course took it away from them, because they had no, you know, they didn't have any rights to go in and getting a patent for what they invented. So they a lot of times their white masters took it, and they took ownership of what the black folks invented. So again, it goes back to where we're put in a position where we had to be innovative to survive. It's like evolution. You know, you got to do whatever it takes to survive. So that's where. So now it's probably ingrained, I guess, in our, you know, as black folks, because of that entire history, it's ingrained in us, become part of our DNA to survive.
But Vincent has started a long time. Just look at the pyramids.
Yeah.
I mean, Pythagoras, he found pi. Yeah. Pi was in the pyramids 2,000 years before he was born. Yeah. And this weekend, the Guyana Reparations Committee, we have a Reparations Now TV show. We have a video about the mathematics of the pyramid. That pyramid is in the center of the Earth's mass. And it's linked to the diameter of the moon and the sun, and all sorts of other constants are linked to that pyramid. It's supposed to be an energy system too. And that's in our DNA. You know, Philip Imiwali is one of the fathers of the internet. Our young people don't even know that.
Yeah.
And you look at the bumbo bones or the 5,000 years ago, we were the first people that used created mathematics.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you made that intervention, Eric, because there was a world constructed by African people for thousands of years before Arabs and Europeans entered the lives of our people.
Yeah.
And African people, we could speak with authority on Kemet, ancient Egypt,
Yep.
not only constructed the pyramids, they did other things. But I would hope that in your contemplation of the pyramids, you see engineering
Yes.
and all the
Incredible engineering.
associated skills like logistics, supply chain planning,
Planning,
human resources development,
management. Yeah.
subsidiary uh, services like
Inventory,
housing,
all this. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, health delivery, and so on. Because these were massive projects, and you should, I hope, consider them as on the project planning and all the other related
They
fields.
call them mega projects now.
All right, good. Well, you got the terminology, so please apply it, because it's important for our people to know that Africans were doing this kind of stuff 6,000 years ago.
Years ago.
We were performing brain surgery. People used to
Yes.
go from China all over the place to Africa. So, we could spend
Even
a
the
long
open
time.
heart surgery in South Africa was a black man.
Yeah.
Bernard. Yeah.
Yeah. He wasn't even supposed to be a surgeon,
Right.
the racism. But I want to touch on a few other things. I don't think African Guyanese should ask the government. We should demand, because that's our right. Self-determination is a right. And we should have informed consent. And I wish
FPIC,
to
as the
stress
Americans
this,
call it.
because too often we are too ignorant of our history as Guyanese in general and as African Guyanese also. And I think it's very important we keep harping that we don't know our own history. I mean, the whole thing about African Guyanese ending up mostly in the services is precisely because it wasn't Burnham who failed us, whether or not he attempted to. It went far before that. It was the colonial
British,
government.
the village movement, and how they
No,
forced us
it was a wider movement than the village
yes.
movement. It was a movement for an entire civilization. And they made agriculture unprofitable for our people. And that's why our people started pouring into these other areas. Some people also left and went into the interior, gold and diamond, as well in Balata
Gold and diamond, Balata.
Eventually in Mackenzie, Wisma, Christianborg. So this is a history most of us don't know, we don't understand. And I think it's important that we spend some time at some stage explaining that. The other thing,
Kimani, remember Winkle, where all the top engineers used to be hired out to go and fix everything?
Yeah, I actually have an essay on Winkle, the Winkle Africans. Yeah. And there's a part of New Amsterdam that's still called Winkle.
Winkle,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's from the Dutch word for shop. Yeah.
Yep.
I want to touch on the word calypso. The word is not calypso.
Kaiso.
It's kaiso. And I think we must make a point about calling these things correctly. The word calypso came about because an English person full of racism and arrogance heard African people in the Caribbean saying kaiso. Kaiso is an African word of encouragement. It means sing it, or something like that. You'd hear the old-time Kaisonians introducing themselves. Tell them, Charlie, or something like that. Okay? Now, Kaiso is what our people call it. Calypso is a Greek lady of the night who detained Odysseus, right? In the Odyssey for 12 years from going home to his family. She is Calypso, not our singers of that particular African genre that you could trace back to praise singing way back to to the banks of the Nile thousands of years ago, as I did in my book on libation. So I think we need to say this thing is kaiso, not calypso, because we cannot allow, it's the same question. Other people who are not us must not define us, and we must not permit them to define us and our products and our environment. Furthermore, we must seek information so that we are giving informed consent about these things. We debate them from a point of view of knowledge, and we make our choices from a point of view of knowledge.
Kimani, it's I pass, because the Amerindian community, indigenous people in Guyana, they have FPIC, free prior informed consent.
Yeah. Well, we don't know enough. And we're not conscious enough and aware enough and alive to our interests enough. And it's directly related to these questions of identity.
Yeah.
There's no excuse for it, but it's directly related. But we're supposed to be talking about a specific word.
Well, the conversation is about the use of the word Negro because it exists in official circles. The police still refer to a man of Negro, a Negro man, a Negro woman, and Nigel Hughes just at a moment said no, he's African Guyanese, and the rest is history. The first response from the government was from the Attorney General, who said, well, we are making nice. This thing was being used now for 180 years. Eric Phillips, what do you make of that? First of all, that it has remained on the books.
Well, it means, David, that we still have a lot of colonial laws that we haven't changed. We need a complete review of that legal architecture that we inherited, including the nomenclature, and that should be done once we are independent. But as Kimani said, we don't care about those things, right? Because we are a cultural people. But the fact that he would say we've been called that for 180 years and therefore it doesn't matter, it shows the disrespect he has for us. It's just disrespect. It means he doesn't understand the meaning of the word Negro. I mean, there are Indians blacker than me in Guyana. If you read Clem Cicheran's book, his grandmother was blacker than me. And so Negro means black. So are they also black? Are Indians also Negroes? So it shows a fundamental lack of intelligence, a lack of knowledge, a lack of respect for him as an AG. In a country they're calling one Guyana, to say something like that is outrageous.
But
Vincent?
Yeah. But even that is not factual based on our brother in the ex-assistant commissioner. Shucks.
Paul Slow.
Yeah, Paul Slow. Paul Slow said that while Paul Slow was working in Guyana in the police force, he said that they changed it, and I can't remember during whose time. And then he did some other research with some other documents that 180 days was, I think it's ignorance. I wouldn't even call it a lie, but it's just ignorance to defend their actions rather than just apologizing. If you are leading a country of multi-ethnic country, and one ethnic group says that something is offensive to them by calling them a certain name, the first thing you should be doing is be sensitive to that rather than trying to go defend it and coming up with a stupid justification. Well, it's been there for 180 days. The vice president comes up and says, well, Nigel Hughes, he's got 50 cases where his clients in the briefs and everything, it was stated there. So what? You're offending a certain set of people in your country, and you're claiming it's one Guyana. You're offending them, and you're coming up with all kinds of excuse not to satisfy them. And then it becomes even more egregious when you turn around, you're recognizing that it's a problem, but you are now going to decide what they should be called. So
Kimani, if he's talking about 180 years, he's talking about emancipation because in August 1 is 186th anniversary. I don't think the Emancipation Act called us Negroes. So I'm trying to figure out where he got that from. If it's also from Barbados, because the original police came from Barbados, and you had the black code in Barbados. I don't know where that terminology comes from, but it can't. This 180 years, he doesn't even know what he's talking about.
Yes, it's not true because Paul Slow even brought up dates with documents where black folks were referred to, and I can't remember, they didn't say Demerarian, I think they said Demerarian something, but he had documentation up way more recent than 180 years when they were referring to black folks. And he said, Paul said, well, he himself said, and I couldn't remember the commissioners, there were two commissioners, where they decided to remove it, but they did not make it official, or they had to go through some process. They did not go through that process. However, they had made the decision to change it. So some commissioner or somebody came back after them and decided to reinstate it. So those are the kind of issues. But the thing is, it should not even matter if you have a responsible, mature government in place, rather than you hear it's offending a certain section of your population. It's offending them. It's like what we had up here, Dr. Han, you recall the Washington Redskins.
Right.
They had to go change them. I mean, what could be more sensitive than that? And especially calling yourself one guy, and then now you're gonna come to pile on top of it, to stick your fingers in the people's eyes by saying, well, okay, I am gonna decide what you should be called.
So we're legally Negroes, right, according to the police, all of us, people of African descent.
Yeah. Winston Felix said tonight on the panel
that's the man.
2006, the issue came up, and he gave directives to the commanders to stop using Negro. But he retired the same year.
Yeah, and they didn't institutionalize it.
Right. Yeah, you see?
Yeah.
And that is why it has to be institutionalized.
But there's something else. There are a couple of other things.
Are we called anything in the Constitution? Are we in the Constitution as Negroes? I know we have Amerindians, but are we mentioned in the Constitution as Negroes or anything?
And Vincent Alexander and Takumo Gonse were here last night. And I reminded them that there was a professor anthropologist, Desprez, that came here in the late 50s, early 60s, and he wrote that book on ethnicity. And he said he was amazed that black people in Guyana were calling themselves African. They weren't calling themselves Negro or colored, right? And in 1961, Sidney King and H.H. Nicholson are forming the African Society for Racial Equality, not the Negro Society or the Colored Society. In 64, they're forming the African Society with Cultural Relations with Independent Africa. Africa appears two times. ASCRA appears two times. And so the point and Vincent conceded that in this thing about nation building, one people, one nation, one destiny, meant that the specific things that were offensive to African people just fell by the wayside. And I know that in the case of the WPA, ASCRA became WPA. WPA became multiracial and dealing with the issues of Pacific, the Kukan-Kilon Bile, right? And in fact, people are seen as racist. And Vincent made the point that when he raised the question of African people on the oil, the Indians in the PNC call him a racist. All right? And I know that at some point in the WPA, some WPA members who are not of African descent referred to me as a racist for dealing with African issues. And so that's the reality. The political parties in this nation building, those things drop by the wayside.
I'm very anxious for us to understand where these things come from.
Yes, go right ahead, Kimani.
Because too many of us don't understand that we're dealing with structural deformities in our community. And some of those structural deformities are mental deformities,
Yeah.
arising out of what I would generally call mental enslavement and its consequences. The N word that we're talking about, if we want to understand that, and we want to understand a lot of the mental deficiencies that mark African people, we've got to understand how African people were deposited in Guyana and the circumstances in which that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us believe that we know about enslavement, and we generally refer to some of the physical constraints, not all. And we usually are unaware of the tremendous and continuing mental consequences of enslavement. Let us realize that the enslavers of African people wanted a person who was not rebellious, who was docile, who would go to and do the work and produce for them and accept their lowly status. These people, the enslavers, might have been evil, they were, but they weren't stupid. And they knew that physical restraint was a last measure. They understood that if they wanted to enslave us the most effectively, they would have to do that mentally.
Mentally.
So they attacked our identity, which is what gives us our moorings. Identity is what locates us in place and time, tells us what's right, what's wrong in an instant. If you mess with somebody's identity, you're making them into a ship upon a stormy sea without a rudder.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important we understand this. So African culture was outlawed. Up to today, some statutes outlaw aspects of African culture. We don't understand it. Obia, for example. Obia is a descendant of the tremendous medical achievements of African people over thousands of years.
The
It's linked
Sangomas.
to ancient Egypt.
Yep.
But we don't know because we're too ignorant of our history. So what did our enslavers do? They cut us off from our history. They told us our culture is dotishness. They tried to make us so subservient that we would accept our inferior status.
Converted us to Christianity.
But that's part of it.
Yeah.
One of this, I'm going to come to that just now. This N word, this Negro. We were captured, Walter Rodney made this observation. Africans were captured as Africans in Africa. Sail them across the Atlantic, what do they become?
Negro.
Yeah, and why? Because they want to destroy our identity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important for us to understand that process. It's not only destroying our identity, which is the most offensive thing and deep-seated harm it's operating onto today, but also
our memory.
Whosoever names, who defines, rules. And if you accept somebody else's definition of you as whatsoever they define you, you have been oppressed in the most fundamental way.
Kimani, that's why they call us slaves instead of enslaved people.
Enslaved Africans.
Yes, enslaved Africans.
Yeah.
But they call us slaves to diminish us.
Of course, not only to diminish us, but diminish us in specific ways. If you accept the term slave, you're saying that we went willingly into that condition. You're saying that the everyday resistance, revolt, and revolution put up by our people did not occur. You're saying, for example, that the revolution in Haiti, Saint Domingue, did not happen. You're saying 1823 Guyana did not happen.
And in that book, Tongue of Tears, we were called Africans.
The Costa is a very
niggers. Yeah.
The Costa is a very respectful woman. She's no longer with us. She was from Brazil.
Right.
You know, we were in the archives at the same time when she was researching that book. So we
Yeah.
spoke at length about it, you know.
But
So,
coming back, I don't know if you guys saw the vice president press conference yesterday, and the guy is full of tricks. After bashing Nigel Hughes and this whole thing about using the word Negro, and he went on and on. The question was asked, and the question was asked by a reporter, and the reporter talked about the N word. She didn't say Negro. She said, the question was about the N word. You know what that man immediately said? No, no, no. Don't ever talk about N word. The N word is something totally different. It's not about. So he's immediately diminishing this whole thing about how black folks feels about the Negro stuff. So he's telling her, you know what, this Negro thing is a made-up story. As a matter of fact, he said that this whole issue is a made-up issue. So he's telling her, no, 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 don't mix up the two. Don't mix up the Negro with the N-word. And it was all, he was saying this again to emphasize that they're not the same. But that's the way that he operates. He knows, he knew exactly what he was saying. But nevertheless, he went ahead and said it. And so it doesn't surprise me that they're coming out with this name now to really be in control of everything, so that they could say, well, okay, we came up with a solution. They created a problem, which is their modus operandi, by the way. All every step of the way, everything that they do, they create a problem, and then they come up with some kind of a so-called solution and trying to take credit for
But
it.
Kimani was taking down a part which I'd like him to continue, but just to visualize what he's saying. He's being cunning in that he's not just addressing the word Negro, he's now trying to switch it to say East Indian is
East
bad.
Indians, yes, that's where I was going to go, Eric, and I want you all to comment on that. Because it says some people find the words Negro and East Indian offensive. Well, I live in Guyana. I never ever met anybody, including East Indians, who said the word East Indian is offensive. The C word is offensive.
Never.
well, I have a different experience. Some Indian people told me that they found the word offensive. And if you look in my recent text about Guyana, people's political history of Guyana,
So now,
I don't think
Kimani, could you continue? So what would they prefer to be called then?
Indians, that's what they told me, right?
From India.
So
Indian descent.
it's East that is offensive.
Yeah,
Not
and they said because I asked them what they want to be called. But you see, I think I run the risk of letting the vice president, attorney general, and all of them off the hook in a certain way. And I think it's important to recognize it. We simply, all of us in Guyana, simply don't know enough about our history.
Right.
And if we don't know enough about our history, I don't think we could expect those gentlemen to know it in a way that it ought to be known.
But Kimani,
That's
it's
number one.
deliberate.
Let's get back
It's
to Eric.
deliberate that we don't teach.
I want to finish this point, please.
Yeah.
Right.
Because there's a subsidiary point I want to run on to. I don't want to isolate the two.
Mm-hmm.
Irrespective of whether they know or ought to know their history, there's a process that they ought to engage in that was mentioned here tonight that is very important. You cannot name or properly name somebody else, whether it's an individual or a group.
Unless you're a slave to them.
Right. So it's improper. It's one of the most objectionable things. The proper way of proceeding is to go to those people and say, look, I hear you've got a problem with this word. How do you wish to be called? The people concerned need to do something that I mentioned before. Move for informed consent, which means that you have to inform yourself, educate yourself about the word that we object to, or whatever it is we object to. But most of us do not do that. We simply don't know, and we wallow in our ignorance. And this is where something Eric was egging me to talk about, the Christianity. This is where it comes in.
But before you go
Yeah.
I
there,
mean,
Kimani, before
I
you
just
go to
want to outline
Christianity,
something. Sorry.
before you go to Christianity, let me get Eric and Vincent in on the statement today. Eric, you were going the statement there.
No, no, I'm amazed and amused that instead of addressing our issue,
Yes.
he joins it to the hip to another issue, a subsidiary issue, to make it look like, well, the two are the same.
And Eric, doesn't that remind you of reparations for indentureship and
Indentureship, yeah, the
the
same thing.
playbook? There's a playbook
Same
going on
playbook.
here.
Same
There's a
playbook.
playbook, and the thing is to take away self-determination from African people.
And you saw
Right.
Ravi Dev's article this week where he's
Yes.
saying that we should forget who was here first, who suffered the most, and who made the most achievements. And again, trying to diminish that we were here 200 years before them, enslaved, we died, we built Guyana, because they don't want to give us credit for that. So
Right.
indentureship is the same suffering as enslavement. So they're trying to, that's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, but we've got to be aware enough, knowledgeable enough to point out what are the differences.
Yes.
Yes.
And a major difference.
Eric wrote a brilliant letter that is cited all over, in which he made the differentiation between slavery, indentureship, and colonialism. And I think the definition of colonialism was very striking because all of us, all ethnic groups, face the brunt of colonialism. But African people were the only ones who were enslaved as chattels. As chattel. And I think that's the distinction that has to be made. I have been really going after PNC politicians to say to them, you all are being lazy when you all say all of us are suffering. No, Amerindians, indigenous people are living in the hinterland. Their suffering is about their environment and their challenges. And East Indian people, Indian Guyanese, they are sugar workers for the most part. They're farmers. They're going to have issues that has to do with farming. And African people work for the state. They're the only people who are forced to pay taxes. They pay taxes automatically. They can't dodge taxes.
Dr. Hines,
Yeah.
with all due respect,
Yeah.
I think you're describing some of the living consequences of the scourge.
Yes.
And not,
But
because the major consequence is loss of identity.
yes.
And the kind of confusion and
That exists
stupidity
today.
that
right. And
is
that's the point I am
you know-
making for African people. This question of identity is most pronounced among us because of our experience. And so
But that's the point I'm making.
Kimani was highlighting it today. And again, without this prior informed consent, they're again naming us
yes,
in the way we were named during
that's
slavery.
right. That's
It's a
right.
repetition.
But guys, I mean, getting back
Yes, come in, Vincent.
getting back to the reality that we're dealing with here, folks. I mean, we could come up with all of these intellectual and theoretical stuff that should be there. The reality is we're dealing with a government that is a dictatorship. Okay, this is not in every walk of life in Guyana. They're deciding for people. Let's go with look. I grew up in Linden, and well, Christian Borg, but we had the Mackenzie Sports Club where all of the sports were being played. That's it's a place where everybody went there to for recreation and to have to whatever function there is. Mackenzie, they took it upon themselves to break down that entire sports complex and build what they want without even consultation with the public. They did the same thing in Bartik, I think. But that's just an example. They do not consult or seek consent from the people who are affected. That's the culture of this PPP.
But
So
there's
we
another
could,
aspect of that, Vincent, and that's the passivity of the populations who
well,
play
no,
the.
well, the passivity of
Let me continue this in my village, which is one of the first villages since the legal termination of physical enslavement. Lots of people mistake that for emancipation, which is another word we need to examine. In my
Right.
village, people had a village office. The building was constructed during the time of Dutch colonialism. The PPP encouraged the people to break up that village. That not the village, but
The building.
village office. Then they moved the pump, which was there for ages. They took it to an Indian area. Recently, I understand they have moved the village office from Queenstown and put it in an Indian area. Now here is Queenstown that has been
The
a
first village in
political
Estable.
entity
Yeah.
from since 1840 something.
1844.
And you have Indian settlements that don't have that political history, don't have that tradition of self-government. And
Governance. Yeah.
the village office is removed from Queenstown. The people, the largest number of taxpayers with a specific identity. Now, I think that one of the things that people in Guyana, and since this is something that affects African Guyanese, I think African Guyanese should initiate it, but in the full view of other people. We must carry out a forensic examination of the experience of the neighborhood councils, right? The neighborhood democratic councils, I think they're talking about. What has happened, whether it's intentional or not, is besides the point.
Destroy the village councils. Yeah.
Exactly. And the whole tradition of local self-government has been destroyed. And the tradition of people's participation in their own affairs.
Yes.
That's perhaps one of the reasons or explanations why there's so much passivity. People are so passive in the face of the kinds of things we're talking about, you know. But
David, let me just add something. I know Kimani is going to come to the Christianity thing.
Right.
This is not a one thing, right? Look at the Ministry of Culture funding something called Stink and Dirty. In essence, trying to redefine us. 2 nights ago at World Cup cricket, they had 3 dancers, 2 females and a male. You know, the male had his pants down like if he's in the States in jail. Again, a black man showing, diminishing us, making the world believe that this is who African Guyanese are. 2 nights ago, cricket, World Cup cricket, I saw this thing and I was shocked. Now, who hired that group to go on global TV to show Africans dancing with a man dressed up like if he's an anti-man?
Well,
the things that are funded under One Guyana, you know, stinging nipples.
And
it's been done. It's been done under the guise of personal development. You know, young people are now making money, and so on. So, really, I am saying, and I hear Kimani, I hear Eric, I hear myself, I hear Vincent about the kind of work that we have to do in the Black community, the African community, in terms of identity and so forth. But
you need identity training.
Yeah, but I am with Vincent.
You need to know your history.
I am with Vincent. Do not talk about that outside of the context of an authoritarian state by a competing led by a competing ethnic group. You know, so that we don't come off as though we are blaming Black people totally for their condition while letting off a state that is intentionally taking advantage and using the power of the state to crush Black people. I just wanted to throw that
David,
in the mix.
this transformation, or this one guy, one people, one nation, one destiny to one Guyana is part of the same process of redefining identity.
One people, one nation, one destiny came out of the original PPP, right? It was actually Brindley Ben who.
Brindley Ben. It was Brindley Ben's formulation.
Yeah.
It has a different connotation than one people, one Guyana.
That's
right.
Yesterday, Bolsonaro says
intention.
he doesn't have color. His color is Brazil, and he practicing the same thing in Brazil. Bolsonaro. Yeah. So there are a lot of parallels with what's going on with these authoritarian leaders. Whether it's Modi with the Muslims calling them infidels, 200 million of them, or Bolsonaro saying there's no color problem in Brazil. His color is Brazil. His color is one Brazil.
Yes.
So we got to understand what we were basically subliminally being taught.
Yes. Or the Mr. who is in Vincent neighborhood, they're in Florida, who are now telling African people that slavery was a good thing.
Yeah.
The benefit. So I just want
I mean that's
in mind the use of the power of the state.
I'm on a Zoom call. I can't.
In augmenting what is already a problem of identity confusion.
Listen, you might, and perhaps you're right if you think that I don't pay enough attention to the racist state.
No, not saying you're not paying enough attention.
Hold on. Let me finish, please.
In case people are thinking that way.
Right. The responsibility is upon us to change it.
Yes.
And I think that we don't have enough energy to keep blaming external forces. We must understand
have to do the work.
That should be part of our analysis. But we need to spend more time fixing ourselves and less time venting at people who we can't change unless we ourselves change. And I want to underline this. Yeah. If we wish to change our reality, we have to first of all be willing to change ourselves.
Yep.
The fault is in us.
Self-repair.
That's it. From the day one, when we started talking about reparations, we were talking about repairing ourselves as an important part of that.
Diop and all those guys said the same thing. Because if you don't self-repair, you get money, you go and spend it with the same people who enslaved you. Because you're mentally enslaved.
Yes, exactly. But I want to flag up words like colored and black. The N-word, I think we need to talk about them and show their deficiencies so that African Guyanese and all interested Guyanese and other people would understand why we object to them.
Yes.
I certainly object to the term emancipation, because if we had emancipation, we would not have been having this discussion. For example,
economic emancipation at the same time.
Well, if you don't have mental liberation, you can't have any other kind of liberation.
Yeah.
And our history has proven that. The term ethnic minority, I object to it at both the term ethnic, which comes from the Latin ethnicus, which means heathen and pagan, and it entered the English from Middle French or something of the sort. And the same thing with minority, which comes from the Latin minoritas.
Yeah.
And both of these terms are objectionable in meaning.
They diminish us.
Yeah, if you're a minority, it means that you're incapable of offending for yourself, thinking for yourself.
Or you're not equal, which is another subliminal message. You're not equal to us. You're a minority.
Right.
We are
right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I would say that all of those terms need banishing from our active vocabulary, and we should only use them when we're quoting people. Yes. And even then, we could put the correct word in square bracket and knock out the incorrect word. But we need a clear set of educational initiatives that will help us to redefine ourselves.
The words colored and black are the same context too, as you were saying.
Yes. I mean, colored comes from when African people objected to being called the N word.
N word, yeah.
You know, and then as we became more powerful, in other words, more willing to define ourselves, some of us started using the term black, and it's many of us still do, and I have severe problems with it. I am not objecting to it. It describes some of us, but not all of us.
But Kimani, as I was saying, and as Clem Ciceran is saying, Indians, a lot of Indians in Ghana are blacker than you and me.
Yes, and that's a reason that many people don't know. The first human beings to live in India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh
were black.
Were African.
African.
Yeah, these are the founders of the civilizations with sites like Mohenjo-daro and Harappa.
Harappa, yeah.
And they're remnants of in Indian culture today, but we don't recognize it. For example, Kali Mai Puja. Kali is black, Mai is mother, black mother. Indian culture is notoriously misogynistic.
Kalipani, the river, Black River.
Kalapani, the black water.
Right? Black water, yeah.
Now, who would worship a woman as God? Patriarchal cultures don't do that. That's a remnant of the African presence. There are many others.
Yes.
You know, when you look
matriarchal.
Yeah, when you look at the Vedas and so on, the people who are the bad people that the Indian heroes are fighting against, they're always dark,
black
or brown,
always dark,
and so on. That's a remnant of our presence there, and there, you know, there's a whole lot of other things that remind us. I mean, Krishna means the black one.
Black. Krishna means black. People don't realize that.
Right? So, I mean, we could go on and on and on, look at Sanskrit and
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Right? The word they use
let me bring you.
know,
yes, come in.
You know, of course, you know, again, I guess it's because of my engineering background, but I'm a more practical type of person. That's been my upbringing. So the question I would like to ask, and I understand Kimani saying, well, okay, we all should change our ways and change ourselves. However, how are we going to do that? Where is the leadership in our organization to do that? Are we? I mean, you're not saying that every single house should go or every individual should change themselves. Where is that collectivity in terms of leading these changes in an organized way, in a structured way, so to make it even more powerful and effective?
I mean, you're talking about how do we mobilize to get it changed. I think it needs to be changed institutionally and legally first, and we have to define what it is.
Oh, but who leads? How do we get?
Listen, could I jump in here?
Hold on, Kimani, because I think Vincent is raising an important question. We do have a problem of identity among African Guyanese, among Black African people all over the world. We that involves it. But weren't there periods in our history and our journey, the Black Power movement period, when we pull up our socks? And I think I'm going to where Eric was going. That we did not sustain those movements. And Vincent is asking, so we keep saying that, you know, we are ignorant of our history. Are we building another movement, an African-centered movement, Afrocentric, Black Power? What? I think that's what Vincent is asking.
All right, I was about to address it, Dr. Hines, but
how are we going to do this thing?
Yeah.
All right, I was about to address it, Dr. Hines. You arrested my intervention. And
I thought Eric was going in that direction too. That's
you put me in handcuffs. I hope you don't call me the N-word in your report. Um, I agree with what Vincent is saying. It's inescapable. And I want to recall that I suggested that we have. Now, I'm one of the people who would begin something like this and do not have a very specific idea of the outcome in terms of structures. I would more identify behavioral objectives, and the way in which things unfold would dictate structures. I also believe in the saying that if you're really ready to travel,
You travel.
the path will open up in front of you
Itself,
as you
yeah.
go. And organizations in Guyana have an opportunity
Yes.
to organize around identity training. And it's just a question of explaining to any Guyanese, but especially African Guyanese, and I would say not only African Guyanese, but especially, I want to repeat that. Why is it that African Guyanese need to learn a number of things about ourselves? It's so simple. I mean, most of us, we go to church, right? What's the English church or the European church? When was it introduced to us?
Yeah.
Under what conditions?
Joint venture partner with the enslavers.
But I wouldn't even say they were enslavers. The church was active.
Mental enslavers.
They were actively involved in enslaving us. Don't forget that when John Hawkins left England to go to Africa to begin the British leg of enslavement, you know what his ship was called? The Good Ship Jesus. Right? Yeah. And these are people who were raping us, man, woman, and child, chopping off your hand if you fight for the same freedom that they say that they represent, you know, and all other nasty things they were doing. In the middle of that, they imposed Christianity upon us. Now, could that have been for our benefit? No. Nope. It's a slam dunk. And we go to church every Sunday or whenever we go. What does the church teach us about ourselves?
Kimani, I was at Oscar's funeral at St. George's Cathedral, and I was amazed that you got this big white statue of Jesus.
Eric, I kept looking at that thing.
I kept looking at it. It's so overwhelming.
Yeah,
I know Jesus is black. So if you at the heart of your religion is a lie, what else do you believe?
Many lies.
Yes. But more importantly, I think coming back to Vincent's question or what you were getting at, Kimani and David, let's go back to where this leads us and where this began. It began at the last election. Then we were dirty black dogs and hungry belly this and this. This is just a setup to repeat it at the next election. By ingraining it in Indians that we're black and we're dirty and we're hungry belly and we're niggers and we're stinking dirty. And as Kimani is saying, structure follows strategy. If our strategy is to make change, we have to first do what he's saying. And we're all saying, we have to define who we are.
Yeah.
And we have to define who we are not. So if we don't want to be called black or colored, we need to say that now. And we need to demand that that's in law.
The best definition of anything.
Yeah.
It is as well as what it is not. I agree with you, Eric.
Yes.
Very important. But let me say something.
Before you go, Eric, you have been active and sometimes as a one-man army on this question of the Africanization of African people in Guyana, if I may put it that way. But would you not say, Eric, that given the onslaught, the overt onslaught of this state against African people, that in a sense, they have opened up possibilities for us to have those kinds of conversations that and a training as Kimani is talking about.
Absolutely.
Than before, because I am on this thing here every day of the week, sometimes 5 days a week, but now we do 6 days, 7 days, we do cricket, we do kaiso, and so on and so forth. And I have seen a kind of consciousness raising, not to where it ought to be, but compared to where it was 4 years ago, Eric,
Yes.
I have seen some steps in that direction. Would you agree with me?
Yes, the environment, the harshness and oppression in the environment is forcing us to start to ask the same questions. Who are we?
Yeah.
And we're starting to define ourselves. I'm seeing it with people wearing their hair, people wearing their clothing. But the media is overwhelming here. We don't control it.
Yes.
The school system nurtures and rewards this because they don't. And if this president is truly interested in one Guyana and a peaceful Guyana, he should have come out after the elections when he became president and said all these things about hungry belly dog and all that. This should stop. But he hasn't because he wants it to continue because it creates that momentum towards the next election where it will be used with artificial intelligence, messages, fake messages, and the people they are going to hire. And that increases the separation between the races. Why would I want a dirty black dog to rule me? My religion says you're beneath me. Read Clem Sichuran's book.
Yeah.
He said when they came here, right, we became the lowest caste member.
Yeah.
And yet where they came from, if you look from where they came in India, with poverty and all sorts of other things, landlessness, they came and made us beneath them, even though, and they became
Eric,
Brahmins and
Eric,
Kaishit and all of
there
that.
is a reason for
Let me
that.
bring Vincent in here, Kimani. Let me bring him.
I'm going to go back to the context here that we're dealing with, okay? We are here tonight on this program, and there are many, many other programs like this. We get on these programs every night. We talk to some people, a very small, if you take it in the context of Guyana, for example, we're talking to people who've got a television. They're, this here is their pastime at night after dinner, or they're in their bed, they look at these programs. How many, when you look at that fraction of the population, it's a very small fraction of the actual, makeup of the population.
Yes.
My question again, if we're going to make this change holistically, how do we get organized? What you cannot just speak to, let's say, intellectuals. I mean, we're enjoying it. We enjoy these programs, but how do we get to the masses?
Vincent, I think I agree with you.
Hold on.
No, I want to make a statement because I agree with you, but I don't think we do this on TV or on thing. We have to meet.
But
as
that's
a group.
my question. But that is exactly you saying what I'm saying. We're on television. We're
not going to share what we're going to do on television now until we meet and until we strategize.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that we're on television and we're talking to our type of people. What do we need to do beyond that?
But Eric is saying he don't want to give away the strategy to you.
Precisely.
On TV.
We have to meet as cultural groups, define what we want, develop a plan, and execute it.
Yeah,
otherwise, they're going to be interlocutors, and they're going to be people strategically put to stop this. That's one of the things we don't do well. Everybody's planning in their own kitchen. We plan in public.
And that's what I was going to get to, is that it's not in our DNA or culture. And I just spent close to 2 years in Guyana, but we do not do a whole lot of planning.
Well, that's what we need to do now. As David is saying, an opportunity is opened up. We need to grab it, and we need to do it strategically.
But this is exactly what I said. It creates an opportunity for us to do our own identity training.
Yes.
And all that you said, Vincent, is I base what I said upon that. Our identity training. We need to sit down, plan it, and execute it.
Yes.
We have to make certain that we engage all the people in terms of structural development, In other words, we have to aim at getting into all the villages and towns, the
Yes.
communities of our people.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You know, just an aside, I see Lance Young says you have to put it in the education system. That's going to remain aspirational.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Because most people who man the education system or have done so for the longest while are hostile to African Guyanese development. And I am talking now about many people in the PNC. When
Richard Dan spoke about that in his article.
all right, but look, I was appointed twice as the Walter Rodney Professor of History
Right.
at the University of Guyana.
Yes.
It was scuttled both times by PNC people. You know, and it was the government. The arrangement is that the government must pay for the post, and the university will administer it. The university did their part. I was appointed. Next thing you know, there's no money.
Yep.
So, Lance, I'm thankful for the observation, but that's one massive difficulty there with the education system. Here's another one. I think that African Guyanese people need to go for a self-sustaining capacity to educate ourselves on the fundamentals of ourselves. It's not something we must be willing to farm out to a state agency or to anybody else.
Kimani, that's what ACTA tried to do with the School of Afrocentric Orientation. We got 96 students. We got to do it in our villages.
Yeah.
We can't do it in the school system. We got to do it at home.
Yeah. Gentlemen, I am
going to church. We got to do this.
Hearing from me because I'm going in that direction. I think there's an opening now. I'm seriously can feel it, and I know personally I've been working for this moment. You know, let them beat black people. Let them beat some. You know, Stokely Carmichael used to say sometimes.
Kwame Ture.
Yeah, Kwame Ture. Kwame Ture used to say sometimes people need to wake up and shake up. And the Kaisonian Crow said, why black people always want a kickstart? And I think we get some kickstart here. And it's up to us to seize the moment. And
David, we have to network.
Yes,
because we have a lot of people, a lot of African people in the Caribbean.
Because
we need to get them involved in this movement too.
And it needs to be done in a very serious, again, and structured way. Because, you know, and people like the PPP, and you know, we've got a guy here named Donald Trump. That's how they operate. if you do not sustain this issue, it will be the news of yesterday.
Yes,
we're gonna make a big hoorah about it, and then they know that it's gonna go away after a few days or after a few weeks. So that is why we, unless we, and that's why I'm saying it has to be an organized, sustainable effort. We just can't, because we've been talking about since the PPP came into office. Every night you could pick out a different effort, a different issue that that opens up a lot of opportunities. I've talked to politicians about these opportunities, and guess what? It disappears off of the news.
But Vincent, I don't listen to politicians, and we can't listen to them. We have to focus on ourselves.
I want to say something here. And I would urge us to, one of us, and I think this is Dr. Heinz's area, just get a ballpark description of this question of African identity in Guyana, because we need to learn from our past.
Yeah.
Without attributing blame,
Yes.
the important thing is to take responsibility. Excuse me. So that we don't repeat any errors that we made in the past. So I would say that would be a task. But I like the idea of linking with struggles that are going on in other parts of the world, especially the Caribbean.
And Brazil.
And in Brazil, yeah. There are lots of things happening in Brazil.
In Brazil.
And Colombia.
I'm heading there next week.
Where?
Colombia, they're dealing with Afro-descendant land rights. I have to speak. Yeah.
All right. I don't know if you know, but the UN called me twice to talk about land rights, African land rights.
Conference is next week.
No, this was years ago.
Okay.
But I mentioned that because I've just finished a piece of research that I promised then. And that's the role of navel string, placenta.
Where you bury it. Yeah.
Well, I've just produced something that describes and analyzes how our people in ancient Egypt used to do that. So the next part is Africa, the rest of Africa.
But Kimani, didn't you introduce that with Gary when we were dealing with the Ancestral Rights Bill, if I remember, or the Perpetual Trust? I remember you had inserted that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm just saying that there's an elaborate description and analysis of it since then, So I'm saying that in order to say that knowledge is going to be linked with the same practices in Colombia and all of those places.
Yeah.
Because our people still do that. And we still say, my neighbor string buried there.
Neighbor string buried there, bury me back there, yeah.
Yeah, but most of us don't understand the tremendous significance and the depth that comes from. And it's one of those things we need to educate ourselves on, because that's a marker.
You know, Kimani, one of the things that I've noticed in Guyana is that we don't understand the power of names. So you take half the husband name, half the wife name, and you give them some screwed up name, and that child's destiny is disturbed. Yeah. Names have power. Names have meaning. Names have feeling. It goes back to who we are.
Yeah, it shows.
Well, Kimani wrote the first African naming book in Guyana. And I know that well.
We use it at AGDA. It's one of the biggest books looked upon at Emancipation Day Festival. And people come every week to look for names at AGDA.
Look for names, yeah.
So why y'all don't republish it?
You have to.
Well, actually, one of my dissertations in a dissertation I did in Egyptology is on names and naming. And the whole school was vitalized by it because they'd never seen a cultural approach to it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things I want to write. Well, I've got a draft of the book, but it's one of those things I need to complete, because we need to understand that the names, African names we know, come from deep down, deeper than Nigeria or Ghana, or Azania or one of those places, and they all belong to a single system. We are accustomed to thinking about ourselves in ways that are balkanized.
Yes.
But all African names, in fact, it's all African culture, is really one with different expressions.
Yes.
But
Kimani
that's
Nehusi,
not a story.
Kimani Nehusi, Eric Phillips, Vincent Alexander. We've covered a lot of ground.
Vincent Adams' wife.
Vincent Adams.
What did I say?
The man named Springberry and Linden, right?
Vincent Adams.
It's a VA anyway. It's VA. So.
He's my company here every Friday night. And tonight I have to apologize because Dawn Cush should have joined us, but she has come down with the flu. And so she was not able. She should have been a panelist earlier tonight when she didn't make it there. So I want to apologize for her. And
our presence is important, David, because we do a lot of things in our culture through the women.
Exactly.
Well, I had it in mind as one of the last things to say that I wish you had.
And you get that opportunity now. You're closing remarks.
Well, let me say it anyway, at the risk of repeating myself. I think in everything we do, we have to include our sisters. It's an extremely important thing. Women don't exist alone. Men don't exist alone.
Right.
And if we have challenges, we need to face them together. It's no good facing them in isolation from each other. Of course, women must go off and talk what women talk about and so on. And men must do the same thing. But in the final analysis, our communities must take community action. And you cannot afford to omit any meaningful section of our community and expect to get the best recommendations and the best results.
Let me follow up on Kimani.
And there's a statement on the screen there, Eric, that I want you to read to you and Vincent, because it's my sentiment too. Professors, you all have your work cut out, both local and global, and I know I give you all a lot of work on this program, but you all have nudged us into the community. Right.
But we live this, at least Kimani and I, we live this.
Right.
We can't escape it. But I wanted to follow up on Kimani because you notice now all these international development organizations got special programs for women. And our women are falling into the trap that they're special.
Yes.
We're family. What happens to you happens to us. It's just another way of destroying our identity as a family unit. And our women don't seem to understand that. They're proud to say that they got oil blocks, 3 of them, right? Or they got this.
Hey.
It's a strategy to separate us.
Yeah,
to destroy our identity.
And Eric, I'm glad you raised that, because I didn't want to tell Kimani the hardest thing to do, to find, is to get women and young people to come in the open like this. We always said, whether youth, where the women, is the hardest thing when you're putting together a panel. Eric can tell you.
Hard, but not impossible.
Our sisters, and it never used to be like this. Huh? It never used to be like this. But now it's difficult to get our sisters and the young people, because
they're intimidated in the workplace and other places, David. They're intimidated.
Yeah, and the NGOs are giving the ones who are willing to come forward, they're giving them all kind of little money here to do NGO work.
To make them think they're not like us.
Yes.
They're different.
The whole feminist movement has cultivated a hatred among some of our sisters for men.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're trying to correct that by talking about the womanist approach, which includes
as opposed to the feminist approach.
Yeah.
As opposed to the feminist approach.
In my own researches, one of the things I'm emphasizing is the way in which, for most of our people's history, women did not define themselves in opposition to men or vice versa.
Precisely.
And these are things we have to begin to teach again.
And the Queen Mother was supreme.
Right.
Well, it's not only the Queen Mother was supreme. In every African society,
matriarchal,
they had respect for women, respect for all human beings, and women had structures through
and they were the nurturers of the community.
Always, right? But women had structures at the highest level.
Their own structure.
Many of the European scholars who look at ancient Egypt, for example, they don't understand that.
Nefertiti, they're still trying to figure out.
Vincent, your closing thoughts.
Well, it was very educational for me, to be honest, and especially learning that the official word is Kaiso and not Calypso. I always used to use Kaiso. I thought it was a short for Calypso, to be honest. So, you can't play some Kaiso. I thought it was just a short for Calypso. So I did not know that Kaiso is really the official word. So
I'll send you my paper on it.
Even quick way which we use loosely really is Kakale. And I am so proud of Buxtonians in this regard.
David, David, you started this thing with a song. You always do.
Yes.
And we got to have our cultural artists become part of this movement.
Yeah.
For this Black and African and Negro.
Yeah,
because
right.
they can, make this popularize this thing much quicker than we can.
Exactly.
And they got to get involved, our cultural entrepreneurs and artists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Vincent, I caught you by. In
No,
Oxford,
no,
don't say quickly. They say calculate. Even the younger ones. There's one thing I'm proud of them. That thing. Even the little one. The calculate about dance calculate.
man.
So where does the term come from?
West Africa.
Which all right.
It's like Fulaman, right? We call people Fulaman. It's from the Fulani tribe.
It
They're
is from the
Muslim.
Fulani, and I always associated Fulani with East Indians. When I got to graduate school,
but you could see the
Yeah,
translation.
that Fulani
The Fulanis
But
were people from ancient Egypt who
Egypt.
came across
And came down.
relatively late.
Yes.
But they became Islamicized.
Yes.
maybe you
And
guys,
many
maybe
people
you
think-
guys have the connection here. But it's interesting, from a geologic standpoint, that our continent was joined to West Africa. So I don't know what happened in those days, when they were. So I don't know if it has any connection to,
We still joined spiritually.
before human beings appeared, Vincent.
I know we've moved people by boats and ships, the slaves, but was there
Enslaved Africans.
any residual connection in terms of of humans before the splitting of the continent?
No, human beings didn't appear until after those continents separated.
Right. Separated. The Bering Strait. Mm-hmm.
But there is enough evidence of currents and so on, as demonstrated by Van Sertima,
Yeah.
to believe to know that it was possible.
But the
that there were
200 ships
Africans-
left Mali and came across.
No, that was later.
Later,
Right?
yeah.
I'm talking about before then. I'm saying that it's not improbable that the first human beings were Africans.
But
We
Luzia,
don't know for
Luzia, that skeleton found in Brazil, there's still
Well,
controversy with it, but
well,
that's
you
supposed
see-
to be a black person.
Yes, and there were two sisters or three who were living in either Tierra del Fuego or somewhere to the south in Argentina,
Argentina, Mexico.
who were
Yeah.
African people. And they said these were the original. I think it's a BBC program on them.
Yes, I'm trying to find it here on my desk, somewhere
Yeah.
behind here. Yeah.
It's one of those things that we haven't taken up as scholars enough.
But you know what's
And-
happening, Kimani? The others are going out of their way to try to prove other things before
we
we
see
even
that.
validate it. I'm seeing that now with the new technologies.
Well, look, we've seen this so much in language and linguistics, in history, in Egyptology. I'm perpetually combating this kind of thing and suffering for it because I'm being attacked and denied different things.
Even
But,
Australia, you're finding us there.
Yes.
Well, the Australians are really Africans who
Africans.
migrated a long time
A
ago.
long time ago and become
You know,
aborigines. Yeah.
It's the same with people in Papua New Guinea. Going straight up to the
But Kimani, they're here. You could see them. You could feel them. They're here playing cricket. And you could
Right.
see their face.
Well, if you know the language, you will see some of the names, right? There's a guy called
Yes.
Ani, for example.
Yes, yes.
ANI or something like that.
Yes, yes.
The ancient Egyptian-
Kimani, Nehusi, Eric Phillips. Eric Phillips, Vincent Adams. Thank you all so much. Cyril Walker, your comment.
David, you need to do a history lesson once a month. Choose a topic, bring someone in. Because as Kimani is saying, we've lost our identity because we've been disconnected from our knowledge.
Eric, I have work for you all. Don't worry. Don't worry. It's coming. I have work for you all.
Well, what's it, David? There's going to be some. The press release was issued.
Yes.
What's the response to that? Because I was surprised to hear that press release was even issued before your meeting at 3:00 today.
Yes, the press release was issued at 3 o'clock. Our meeting was at 5 o'clock. We passed a resolution rejecting the press release. We are saying that they cannot tell us what they are naming.
Define.
They need to meet with African representatives, and we tell them what we want to be called. And we don't want no memo from the cabinet. What we want is to be enshrined in law. And we are calling on the PNC and AFC, Vincent Party. We are calling on
That
them
sounds like a low blow by.
to introduce a bill that Africans in Guyana want to be called African Guyanese. So that's where we are at the moment.
And it's appropriate in the 1823 bicentennial.
Exactly.
Well, I will make an announcement that I'm speaking.
Tomorrow.
It's not tomorrow.
It's
It's
very-
Sunday.
Yes.
Sunday?
Yeah, tomorrow, Sunday.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
please pass it around.
I can pass it around in the WhatsApp group.
Right.
On the Dutch. Mhm.
The dots.
Yeah,
Vincent,
I'm in here.
Vincent, I'll see you on Sunday.
Oh, definitely.
Well, y'all got a cricket match?
Well, we got cricket program.
Actually, West Indies playing on Sunday or tomorrow?
It's tomorrow they play
Tomorrow.
Uganda?
Tomorrow.
Uganda. Yeah.
Right. So
I wonder what's going on in New Zealand and Afghanistan. They're playing now.
yeah, that is
Yeah.
going to be a tough one.
You notice? You see America upset.
Pakistan.
Boy.
Pakistan panic in
And
the
Canada
last
upset
over.
Ireland also.
Yes, today.
Canada beat Ireland
Yes, by
Yeah,
12
beat
runs.
Ireland.
today. What? Peter Charles going to say war.
But you know, the American and Canadian teams are West Indians and Pakistani.
That's
And
right. and they pump a lot of
You
money
know,
into the game.
I really want to disturb us to make a statement.
Yes, Kimani.
It shows how unimaginative African Caribbean people are, all of us. There was a point in time when Sobers was in his glory. Australians and other white people of good conscience used to say West Indies cricket got a certain brand. We
Yes.
like how West Indies play.
Play.
And then you had this guy who ended up in jail from Antigua, Stanford.
And
Yes.
You had
destroyed
his
it.
thing.
Yeah.
We did not take, and this is the entire Caribbean now, not only African Caribbean people, but Caribbean people. That's the moment when we should say, hey, we got something here. And we should have had that league organized.
And be the
Look what happened now.
biggest brand in the world if we did.
Yeah. No imagination.
Don't
You
get
know,
us started
I
on
mean,
that.
we can't even, these people tell us that you can't bowl more than one bouncer per over.
Over.
And we didn't come to that with a law to tell Shane Warne that he must only bowl one flipper or one
Yeah.
leg spinner per over
Yeah.
and see how they can like it.
Next
You
thing
know,
you
okay, brothers.
can't hit more than
Yeah.
2 fours in
But
an over.
Kimani,
Or
Kimani,
something like that.
Kimani,
You get
Yes,
Vincent
sir.
started now.
as West Indians, and I can tell you, we love bumpers. You know what was my psyche when I used to go in and bat? A bump is a long hop. So we never,
Vincent,
being kids,
But you know, Vincent,
Yeah,
you're
you're kind of
creating
afraid of
problems
us.
now because
Vincent, that was exactly my
the
approach.
purpose.
And
Yes.
I never understood. I used to hook instinctively until
Yes.
I heard one of my friends saying it. And playing in the league in England, one day, like, so, hit the ball out the ground, and I walked down to the other guy, batting with me, and I said 684. I said, "What did you, man?" You see, in that league, white people had made a rule
Not
that
to-
younger six is only 4 because
Yes.
West Indians used to hook. Anytime you little shot, balang.
that's right. Instinctive. It was instinctive.
But David, look how Vincent creating problem. The people who want name East Indian and he calling them West Indians.
Yeah, yeah. You see, I can get away. I can get away with that because I'm half and half.
He's half and half. He's half and half.
You can get ash from both sides, Vincent.
Yeah, I remember I remember during the disturbance in Linden in the 60s, I was a little boy, and my parents and my three siblings had to leave. So I was there with my father, and every day I used to say, "We're gonna beat the coolie out of you, don't worry."
Megan left the black.
Oh, Lord. Gentlemen, yes, Frollet, it's Stamford. I think I may have said Stanford.
Yeah, and I see the score. Somebody Chisel put it in the group there. 159 for 6.
159
Afghanistan,
for 6.
New Zealand in
New
trouble.
Zealand 18 for 2 in trouble.
Sounds so to me.
That Afghanistan team, watch that team.
Yes,
Watch
dangerous.
That Afghanistan team.
Well, the opening batsman is play for the Amazon, you know. He know this pitch very well.
But a lot of people paying attention to him. But the other guy too.
The other guy and him, they bat together since they were 16.
Yeah,
it's a pair of batsmen.
That other guy is just as good as
good,
he
just
is.
as
A lot
good.
of people aren't paying attention to him, but the two of them
Yeah.
are
And the third batsman only needs 6 more sixes to hit 100.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, we
all right.
Thank you all very much. And Kimani, please don't be a stranger.
Well, you know, I don't go to the house unless they invite me, you know.
It's nice seeing Kimani and my again.
All right.
Oh, yes. Thank you all for staying with us late. I know it was a late start tonight and I didn't give you all notice, but everybody eventually came to school. And so have yourself a good Saturday. I'll see you all on Sunday night. Vincent and I and Basil and others would be on. And then we come back on Monday for more Politics 101. Love is the watchword.